This is Robert Martellacci, the MindShare Learning Report in C21 Canada, and welcome to another episode of MindShareTV. In fact, it's episode 1013. We have a crucial conversation lined up today on an ever-growing challenges of mental health in education. I'm honored to be joined by two incredible leaders who are championing change in this space. Dr. Gina Cherkowski, who is the Executive Director of R&D at Headwater Learning, and Steve Brown, the CEO of Nelson Edwin. And today we are taking a deep dive into the upcoming Mental Health Summit in Banff 2025, where education leaders, educators, and experts will come together to tackle pressing mental health crisis in schools. As a proud media partner of this event, MindShare Learning and C21 Canada is committed to amplifying these vital conversations. And let's not waste time in getting started. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, mental health concerns in education have escalated significantly in recent years. I think COVID comes into play, no doubt, which we can touch on during this conversation, for increasing levels of stress and burnout amongst teachers to rising anxiety and depression in students. It's clear that we need new solutions. Gina and Steve, from your perspective, talk to me about what are the biggest challenges educators and school leaders are currently facing, and when it comes to mental health, and how has this need evolved in recent years? Gina, why don't you kick it off?
Sure. Thank you very much, Robert. I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about is actually at a summit that you hosted, we had Kim Schonert-Reichel sharing some of her seminal research on the stress contagion. And as stress is elevated for students, it's also elevated for teachers, parents, families, and other folks in our school buildings. And so we need a holistic approach that impacts not just our students, but also supports our teachers and leaders in the system, as well as ways to support family. We know that by 40 years old, 1 in 2 will have had a mental illness, and that 50% of all mental health disorders actually start by the time someone's 14. So if we can do some preventative work in schools to support our kids, to get them the tools they need, to do preventative mental health work, and to figure out when it is that they need additional help, I think we'll be doing a lot to help transform this. But we've also got to take care of our big people, as Dr. Jody Carrington says. We need the big people to be well for the little people to be well. So
well said.
System approach.
Over to you, Steve Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with what Gina said, but there's another slant that the pressures that are put on teachers today in the classroom, with more and more things that they're required to do that have little to do with teaching and learning. So if we can give them the tools and the technology to be able for them to be more efficient and agile, to de-stress them, to give them more time. Because inevitably, one thing we know to be true about students is they're very perceptive. And if they've got a nervous or an agitated teacher in front of them, that then disseminates into the classroom. Yeah. So I think starting off a learning environment with a happy and a relaxed educator is a great first step to the beginning of the day. And it could help the beginning of the day. And if the day starts off with tension, then that tends to permeate right throughout the day and the lessons of that day.
Well said. And we'll touch on the power and potential of technology, and particularly AI, as you alluded to. Perhaps technology can play a role in helping alleviate some of those unnecessary pressures. What are the primary struggles students and families are encountering regarding mental health and well-being, and what factors have contributed to this shift?
I think we're seeing an increasing complexity inside our classrooms today. We know that we have more students that have anxiety disorders and are experiencing symptoms of depression. We have a lot of technology issues that, a lot of people are talking about actually students' use of screen time and or bullying. In the old days, bullying happened when we were at school, and now kids can be bullied 24/7 online. So there's a lot of those kind of factors. But I also wholeheartedly agree with Steve, what he said in supporting our teachers. There are a lot of things we can do to help alleviate some of the stressors that teachers are facing. You often have a new program or a new thing coming in, and it's another thing being added to the plate of teachers. They're often dealing with more complex students these days, and probably parents that are also experiencing stress and might be dysregulated along with the students. So to help support our teachers, I think if there's tools that we can use to help support their well-being and also to support their workflow, that's fantastic.
Well said, Steve Brown.
I think there's a cause and effect, and you can't talk about the educational community in isolation, because every teacher, every student is a son, a daughter, husband, a father. And if we can't deal with mental health in a societal manner, it's inevitable that it's going to creep into the classroom. So I think as a generation, we need to understand more about mental health. I think we need to understand and differentiate between mental wellness and readiness, self-regulation. Because if you can do that with coping mechanisms and you come from a happy household in the morning, that's not going to disseminate as deeply into the classroom. So I think it's
Right.
than just school. School's just the area that we have expertise in. But every one of those human beings, whether they're big people or little people, they've got outside forces going on in their lives every day. And if those are positive rather than negative, you're going to have a different dynamic.
Absolutely. And I don't know if economics was referenced. I major in economics back in the day. And I see the economic impact in how that can also, impact, the well-being of parents and students as well in these challenging times. And let's just say times of disruption, mass disruption, whether it's technology or geopolitical forces at play, who many of these students are foreign students and refugees that come from some of the war-torn regions. So that adds further challenges and pressures on teachers, no doubt.
I
Let's.
think one of the things on that, Robert, I think, we're living in a time where whether it's negative or positive forces, it travels with immediacy, and it really travels far and wide, and people's opinions or false ideologies create a stressor for some people and an opportunity to what Gina was talking about bullying, to be able to reach so many people 24/7. So there are a lot of different dynamics. I'll tell you a short story. I actually, which you probably won't believe, but I broke my first ever phone on Sunday. I've never had a case on my phone, and I've never broken a phone.
Wow.
But on Sunday, whilst out for lunch with my adult children, I actually broke my iPhone. And I went to the mall on Monday to the Apple store to get it fixed, and they did it very quickly. But I will tell you, in that hour that I was walking around the Eaton Center whilst they were fixing my iPhone, it gave me anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't sit down on a bench and read the newspaper because I do that on my phone.
You had separation anxiety from your phone.
If you would have asked me that a week ago, I would have said, I would love that. That'd be great.
Right.
To be off the grid, not to be on email, even though it was a holiday day. I would have said, I would love that. And it was absolutely the opposite. It was stressful. And that's one of the things that we need to identify, that, sometimes devices in the classroom, and there's been a marked shift in that. And people were for it and people against it. But I would say that my opinion is wholeheartedly behind it. If kids can be in a good environment without access to outside indicators and influencers, that's probably a good thing.
Right. And a number of provinces have banned cell phones in schools with some guardrails, right?
Yeah,
so, Gina, thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely think that it's very helpful for our young people to have the experience of being cell phone free and just fully engaging and learning to reconnect in different ways with their classmates, with their teachers, and not have that like what we've become is reliant on that phone. There's studies that tell us that even if a phone is in a classroom upside down on someone else's desk and nobody has their phone around, it distracts people, several feet away because they're all thinking about phones, just having one there. So I think having them completely out of mind, but teaching them responsible use, I think is also really, really important. So I like the idea of not having it there, but I do like the idea that we're going to live with these devices. So how do we help people regulate? And that's one of the other reasons I think preventative mental health support in schools just provides kids with the skills, tools, and mindsets they need to cope with stressors in a changing world, to deregulate, but also to connect on a human level again with people around them and to engage more deeply in the learning experience. When we take anxiety down, the part of the thinking brain, is more readily available for us to use and access.
Well said, Gina. Thank you so much for that. Let's shift gears a little bit around mental health and education and it being a priority for Nelson. Steve, as the CEO of Nelson Education, why has mental health become a core focus for your organization? How does Nelson Edwin integrate mental health considerations into its products and services?
I think the operative word there is integration. I don't think you can have curriculum or learning materials without embedding mental health. I think the two, they're not opposites. I think they're absolutely linked. And for us, when we look at the statistics, not only in Canada, but globally, and you look at the rise of mental health issues, and to Gina's point, that the average, whether it's a psychotic break or whether it's deep anxiety or depression, starting earlier and earlier, and there's a lot of data now suggesting that is going down, currently at around 14, but often heading down. So I think that the integration of learning materials, technologies, and mental health and mental wellness, coping mechanisms, and certain other things are critical to that, to ensure that, let's face it, it's not going to be too long that that 7th or 8th grader is responsible societally. They're going to be parents. So if they can learn coping mechanisms and they can learn ways out to de-stress and relax and go through some mindfulness and ways to cope, then perhaps they can teach their kids, and perhaps we can reverse that trend that's been going on for the last 20, 30 years.
Well said. Are there any key initiatives or resources that you've developed to support educators and students in managing their well-being, or partnerships?
Yeah, we have both. We've had various different publications that we've done to talk about adult wellness for teachers. We worked on a project a few years ago, the Third Path, which has been a tremendous success. But it's really now the integration into everything that we do, rather than it being separate. And then with teachers, it's giving them support to give them back that time, because uniformly, if you talk to teachers about their largest single stressor, it's the lack of time they have to spend times with students who need it, or time to prepare for great teaching, which enables great learning. So if we can do anything to support teachers and giving back time for them, we think that's one of the largest things that we can answer the call that they're giving us.
Thank you for that, Steve Brown. Gina, the role of the Mental Health Summit in Banff 2025, it's coming fast approaching, bringing together leading voices in education, including Steve and yourself, to create actionable change. What are some of the primary goals for the summit? Talk to me about some of the outcomes that you envision and the impact on the mental health landscape. And this is very international as well, which kudos to you for having an immense roster of speakers. What unique elements of this summit sets this apart from other educational conferences?
Well, first of all, I just want to say a big shout out to Nelson. Thank you so much for being such a proponent of mental health and well-being, and in integrating that into the work that you do to help support teachers and students. I think that's incredible. And I want to also thank you, Robert, and MindShare Learning and C21 for being our media partners. Our goal here is to bring researchers together with K-12 education stakeholders to really action forward change quickly and help support teachers, classrooms with our kiddos, but also with the leadership. Leaders need support too. And we also have a leadership panel speaking at the summit. So we're super excited that superintendents from around the country can come share what they're doing, what they've learned, and interact and engage with one another. We're hoping for collaborations, connections to be made. It's also going to be an experience. So not only are folks coming to share, learn, and be part of the summit, we've got wellness activities for folks to participate in, including a compassion retreat. So self-compassion is really important for mental health, as opposed to having those negative narratives that kids often will play over in their head, especially if they're told things from classmates. So I think that's really important for us adults to participate in as well, is that self-compassion. We have a forest bathing activity from a certified forest bather. We have serious play activities outside, as well as mindfulness. So there's not only come and learn and get motivated by and inspired by some incredible speakers. Like, we're so lucky to have Dr. Mark Brackett from the Center of Emotional Intelligence at Yale and Kim Schonert-Reichel coming. We also have Dr. Jody Carrington, Jessica Jansen, Sue Neil Singh and his daughter Rhea, who are sharing a very personal story about suicide, depression, and resilience. And then Matthew Murphy, a superintendent from the US, who's done a lot of work leading mental health. So I think we have dynamic speakers, very international, like you had mentioned, but also people can experience wellness themselves. So if we take care of ourselves, we're in a better position to take care of others. It's pouring from a full cup, not empty.
Well said. And so talk to me about the impact on bringing in skills, the durable skills that we talk about at C21 Canada, to prepare students for a future that isn't clearly seen. I'd like to say that they've come of age in many respects because of where we're at in our society today, with the fast changing pace of technology and education, the geopolitical situation. What are we looking at in terms of pivoting when it comes to helping students prepare for a future that isn't clearly seen around resiliency and those durable skills, the 7 C's that we talk about? Perhaps we can both touch on that.
Great question. We know that we're going to need people who are innovative thinkers. We know that the human skills, critical thinking, creative thinking, are going to be very, very important. But what's underpinning those are the skills such as communication. And effective communication is so linked to how we're feeling and how we are able to socially interact with others, our pro-social skills. So if we can help support kids with early social emotional learning skills and capacities inside the classroom, they're more able to participate and engage at a deeper level, and they're more likely to take risks, which you need for creative thinking. They're more likely to have the rational part of their brain ready for critical thinking skills. So I think underpinning all of that is well-being. I always say you have to be well to learn well. So we have to start with being well, and then developing those skills that we're all going to need, including technology competencies, which are increasingly changing. So I think another one we need to add in there is the adaptability skill, because the moment we learn something, it changes and we have to learn something new.
Absolutely. Steve Brown, over to you about equipping students with those essential skills and helping them deal with like mental health tools, if you want to call it.
Yeah, I think that you've got to give the generation, the kids of today in the classrooms, the ability to be, innovative thinkers, but also to be debaters and leaders, not listeners and followers.
Yeah.
And, that starts at home. You see a lot of skewed attitudes that come from what they hear around the dinner table, a lot of disinformation and misinformation of their parents who, through no fault of their own, what they learned when they were in classrooms a generation ago was misinformation, was wrong. So allowing kids to be able to debate their parents and then truly be leaders and teachers to actually educate the generation above them, their parents, that no, actually, mom or dad, that's incorrect what you're talking about. That's not what happened in this country, in society. This is actually what happened, and this is how we're taught about it today. And once they realize that age isn't a barrier to be a leader and actually to have an opinion and a debater rather than just be listening and following, you're creating a world for them that is without paradigm, because you're really enabling them to believe they can do whatever they want to do. And let's face it, it's their world now. We've had our time. You know, we're going to sit and watch it from our deck with a glass of wine. We depend on them, not the other way around. And I think when society makes that paradigm shift, we'll be a better place for it.
I fully agree. I think that's how we're making change makers of tomorrow. And that debate is so important. And, you know, a respectful debate, I think, is critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's pivot now and talk about the importance of partnerships and collaboration as key to meaningful progress in making change happen in mental health and support in schools. How can organizations like Headwater and Nelson work together to drive real change, particularly and create more of a movement around the conference?
Well, you know, Gina and I have known each other 7 or 8 years now. It's flown by. And we've always talked about collaboration and what we can do together. You know, the smartest people always surround themselves with smarter people. I mean, I'll throw a proviso in. When you're me, it's not that difficult, but I am to know that Gina's super smart. But so we're looking at ways how we can bring informed knowledge, data-driven knowledge, to be able to make a difference. And that's what the collaboration for us is all about. We know Gina, this is her area of expertise, and pulls data from not only in Canada, but around the world, and surrounds herself with, you know, experts on mental health and well-being. So to make sure that those inputs are meaningful and correct, driven by data, that's the partnership that we're particularly interested in to be able to serve the community that we serve.
Fascinating. Final thoughts, looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of mental health awareness and intervention in schools?
I think we're looking to do just what Steve said, create a movement. Like, we want to take this and amplify. We want to work with partners that are leaders in education so that we can help provide a greater impact and get students and teachers and leaders the help they need, because I think we're going to be constantly going through times that are challenging, increasingly changing and very dynamic. So we need to have these skills, tools, and mindsets so that we can, you know, meet the challenging demands of our complex world, and that kids feel confident and capable of managing their own mental health. So I think that's what we'd love to help work on with folks like Nelson and yourself. Thank you for helping spread the word.
Thank you for that. Steve Brown.
Nothing would make me happier than to see every classroom that I walked into with kids laughing, with teachers embracing kids because they're enjoying learning. So if we can create a teaching environment that de-stresses the teacher, so that teacher's happier at the front of the classroom interacting with students, that's a great first step. But then to create a learning environment where kids actually love learning and laugh whilst they're learning, that's the greatest achievement I can imagine ever having any part in for mental health, because there's nothing like seeing kids laugh. It's so infectious. Happy kids, to Gina's point, are happy learners, and it's all about outcomes. And if they believe they can do anything and shape the future, they'll enjoy learning. So that, to me, would be the ultimate goal.
Well said, Steve Brown. Dr. Gina Cherkowski, thank you so much for your deep insights and sharing your passion on this very important topic today. For further information on the Mental Health Summit, you can go to www.mentalhealthinschoolssummit.com. My name is Robert Martellacci, the MindShare Learning Report in C21 Canada. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.